International relationships are becoming more and more common. Greg and Katie Buckley met here in New Zealand, fell in love and were married beside Lake Michigan in the US, just minutes from where Katie grew up.
I just figured I'd drag him back to the States with me initially, but I kind of was captured by New Zealand and kind of felt like at the moment that's where we were meant to be.
Did everybody want to taste the sandwich?
Yes, please.
They returned to start their lives here in East Auckland, where Greg's family have lived for generations. Believing God had called them to work with a church in the community in Highland Park, they set about applying to immigration for residency for Katie to ensure she could work freely and help support her family. Thinking the process would be straightforward, the couple were quickly met with the realisation that their marriage wasn't recognised by immigration and they'd have to wait a year before they could apply for residency.
I guess it was just a bit of a surprise to me that that us being married really didn't mean anything to immigration. And that we actually couldn't apply for residency until after we'd been living together for a year, and I guess that just kind of took me aback, going, "Oh wow, does marriage not mean anything in this country?"
Brett Jones, their pastor, who's also married to an American and was confronted by the same problem, says they're being punished for doing everything by the book.
There are people who will rot the system, who will fudge the system, and part of living out a Christian commitment is to not do that and to play by the rules, and it doesn't always work for you. And I know in their case, they've done everything right, they've done everything on time, they've done everything in the order it should be done, and yet they're still having to live with the uncertainty, they're having to live with almost the consequences of doing the right thing.
But this story doesn't stop there. The couple applied for their residency after a year of marriage or living together, only to be told they would have to wait more than 2 years for a decision to be made, and 15 months for someone just to open their file.
The response we got in January was a relatively positive one, with our call centre person telling us that we really shouldn't have too much to worry about. Although they couldn't tell us exactly how far along the application was, that we shouldn't worry, that something definitely would have happened by March, when her permit was supposed to expire. So on that advice, we didn't do anything. We sat back and waited in anticipation for something to come. February then rolled around, and we still hadn't seen anything. So we made another inquiry to the call centre to then be told, who on earth told you our previous bit of information about not being able to worry? And instead, rather than it being a 6 to 9 month wait now for a caseworker, an increase in demand had meant that had been pushed out to 15 months before we could see a caseworker assigned to our case, despite the fact that we had already sat in a queue for almost 7 months by that stage.
Once she realised that her residency wouldn't come through on time, Katie was forced to apply for another work visa, but was told it wouldn't be processed in time before her previous visa ran out, effectively making her an illegal alien. And that meant she'd have to stop working.
Apparently they weren't going to deport me or anything, so they didn't really care that I was illegally in the country. But I guess I wouldn't have any benefits of being on a permit, so that would mean any medical expenses that would have been covered would no longer be covered, and I don't know what would have happened as far as working illegally, but apparently they weren't going to ship me out.
Meanwhile, during their battle with immigration, Greg and Katie were met with some sad news. They'd lost their first child to a miscarriage. Although Katie and Greg don't attribute their loss to the immigration process, the stress couldn't have helped. The stakes were raised when Katie was admitted to Middlemore Hospital with complications. She was told by the Manukau DHB that because she was now living illegally in New Zealand, their accounts department would need to review who would have to pay the hospital bill of more than $1,000.
Well, at the hospital we were given a piece of paper just saying that we need to supply info on my status here, and basically was saying that if I wasn't eligible, then that I would have to pay.
Information which is freely available on the website of the Ministry of Health states that Katie would be covered for maternity care regardless of her immigration status because her husband is a New Zealand citizen. However, this information wasn't given to them.
The information is there and you could say relatively readily available if someone knows where to look for it. But I guess from a frontline perspective, the fact that hospital staff weren't able to tell us off the bat whether we were going to be covered or not, it's not really the sort of thing that you want to have to jump on the internet and find out before you truck your wife off to the emergency room.
The problems all came back to the residency application. If Katie was a resident and the couple's marriage recognised, she would have been covered as a New Zealand resident. But their understanding was that as long as she had a work visa, she would be covered. Concerned that they may have a medical bill to pay, Greg contacted Immigration and Immigration Associate Minister Kate Wilkinson's office and was told that there was no way the work visa application could be processed in a day. So he contacted Endzone. Our inquiry resulted in a work permit being issued the next day.
It was quite helpful to us because we felt like we had a more powerful voice speaking for us and taking a bit of the stress away, and it was quite amazing to find out how quickly they then moved when the media was mentioned.
When we've been told by the Associate Minister's office that she wouldn't have been deported anyway, so we're basically paying $300 in order to do the law-abiding thing. And I kind of
doesn't make a difference.
Which doesn't make a difference. And I guess I'm just, again, like I say, I can't reinforce the fact enough that we're extremely appreciative of the hard work that was done in order to get that work visa put through, but it just seems like there's a flawed process that underpins it all, because effectively we've been fined $300 for doing the right thing.
The application for residency continues, and until that's complete, the cost of international education fees means Katie has to delay applying to college to train for New Zealand's currently overstretched early childhood education sector. Katie and Greg will have been waiting more than 3 years for their marriage status to be recognised in New Zealand, and it all comes down to proving the legitimacy of a couple's love and marriage.
Because it's not just Christians, there are people of other religious faiths as well who would hold to wanting to live in celibacy until they're married, and there's a significant proportion of the population that take that step. Now, there's no reason why the genuineness of a relationship could not be attested to by other means. What it seems to say is that your relationship is only genuine in New Zealand if you're living in the same house and having sex.
This is not about us gaining something out of it, in the sense that, you know, Katie now has a work visa for the year. There is good hope and good signs pointing towards her residency coming through. We just want someone to acknowledge the fact that the processes are flawed.
The States would be an easier option. However, being Christian and having a calling from God, unfortunately, he didn't pick the easier option for us, and we're here, and so I guess it's, well, yeah, we're trying to do everything we can
to make it work here.
Yeah, to make it work.